Welcome to Wake, a cold reading of James Joyce's Finnegans Wake, just to hear it out loud. Join Toby Malone and TJ Young, along with some special friends, as we puzzle our way through what we once thought was an unreadable book to produce a surprisingly listenable podcast. It is Monday, August 12th, 2024. It has been 88 days since we have started reading, with 195 pages complete of 628, meaning we have 433 pages left to go and 31.05% of the way through Finnegans Wake. Welcome to episode 15 of Wake, the podcast which is dedicated to naming all of the world's rivers, streams, ponds, bays, and other bodies of water, all in the name of fulfilling a long-held bucket list item, reading James Joyce's Finnegans Wake out loud just once. I am your host, Toby Malone, joined once more by the best man of all men, TJ Young. Hi, TJ.
Oh, hi. Also, I love that there's a new superlative every time. It makes me feel good about myself, so I appreciate that.
Of course. Yeah, absolutely. Well, you always have nice things to say about me, so it's easy to give it back.
Well, because you're literally the best. But this is not a love fest. That's next episode where we just.
So how's things going? You busy at the moment?
I'm ramping up for the beginning of the school year. I'm trying to be very intentional about this ramp up. You know how it can be where you feel like panicked. You have to do all this stuff. And I sat down and I wrote it down. And I was like, I could do 2 things a day, every other day leading up to it, and I'll be okay. So that's what I'm doing. It's all fine. And as long as I have my syllabus and I stay 2 lessons ahead of the class, then I'm good.
Exactly. And they're very lucky to have you. So we're everyone wins in that case. And then the new semester is always fun, meet new kids.
Yeah, sometimes. And then sometimes, the first half of the semester, you know how it is. You're like, they're great. And then by the second half, you're like, this break could not come soon enough.
Yeah, I agree. No, I do miss the teaching side of things a lot sometimes, but, I'm a teaching librarian now. So I do a little bit of teaching, but mostly it's on information literacy, which is a little less interesting than when I was teaching ancient Greek theatre and things. But, you take what you can get. And, I've got the beginning of the semester coming up myself.
I bet you're getting all the requests from teachers being like, can you come to my class and teach them how to?
Mostly it's, can you find me this article for free so I can put it in my syllabus? And I'm usually like, either yes, here it is in the catalog, or no, that's not. We don't own it. So, people want a free PDF from somewhere, whereas, you got to be above board when you're doing it all efficiently. So. Yeah, and then the teaching is going to ramp up a lot. But yeah. But speaking of ramping up, this week we wade into chapter 1.8, which is a very much intentional water pun, because this chapter is the legendary and much spoken of chapter entitled Anna Livia. So according to many scholars, this was Joyce's personally favourite chapter in the book. This is his ode to ALP, the watery beloved of our much maligned HCE. Edna O'Brien wrote a really interesting article, which I'm going to link to, really good article that was also a preface to a single edition just of this chapter that was published by Faber and Faber. So in that article, she talks about how when this chapter was first published, it was seen as the musings of a shipwrecked mind. But then later on, it come to be seen as one of the surest glimpses into Joyce's genius. Joyce himself said in a letter that this chapter was the one, quote, on which I am prepared to stake everything. So, yeah. So that was the one. This is the one. He wrote it and he rewrote it and he rewrote it again. He wrote 7 different versions of this chapter.
That's crazy.
Yeah, and he would. And we were talking last week a little bit about his manuscripts and how he would write in crayon and different color codes and things like that. And in the show notes last week, I did link to some images from that. It's worth checking out, just sort of seeing his work process. With this one, he wrote 7 versions, each one becoming a bit more rich and a little bit more detailed. And I'm also going to link to a Reddit page in the show notes that presents the first version of this chapter. So that shows you what it was at version 1, and then version 7 is the one that we get in the published edition. So it's kind of interesting. I haven't done a parallel analysis of it. When I was a younger man, I might have decided to spend a weekend doing that. But
the comparative lit desire in you.
Yeah, I did a lot of comparative analysis of Shakespeare when I was doing my PhD, but those days are behind me. But in total, Joyce claims to have spent 1,200 hours writing just this chapter, 17 pages worth.
That's so long.
What's the longest you've ever spent writing a short section of something? Like writing, rewriting?
Ooh. I mean, it's different because plays, you can sit there and be like, oh, I just need to remove this dialogue and cut this and add this, right? I mean, probably across a semester, but no more than like 20 hours, realistically, you know?
Yeah, like 1,200 hours is like 50 days, 24 hours a day.
That's crazy to me.
Yeah, and then obviously he sleeps a little bit, so we're talking. And then this is over years he wrote this. So, but yeah, this is the one he kept coming back to. This is the really important one for him. So I'm interested in. I wanted to preface the chapter by talking about that because the importance for Joyce may filter into the importance for us as readers, or we may get to the end and say, what was all that about? Like we usually do.
Was it worth 1,200 hours? Right.
Well, yeah. I mean, that's the question. So, so this is one of the beloved chapters. This is the one that is held up by Harold Bloom and people like that. So, in this chapter, we're going to see a lot more of ALP, which stands as a symbol for the river Liffey that runs through Dublin. And Anna Livia is named from the An Leaf, or River Liffey, that becomes Anna Livia. And that the second name of Livia is also very close to the name of Joyce's own daughter, Lucia. Throughout the chapter, Joyce takes the names of over 500 bodies of water from rivers around the world and punningly incorporates them into this chapter. So just about any river that you can think of, any major body of water, you can be sure is filtered into this chapter somewhere, usually as a pun somewhere, not as though he's listing rivers, he's using it in that sense. And so
well, coming back to that 1,200 hours, that kind of makes more sense, because even just I continue to go back to the links in which it takes to get information then is different than it does now, where we could literally have ChatGPT create a list of every river that exists in the world, right? But he's looking through atlases.
Imagine what Joyce is going to do with ChatGPT.
He would break it. It would be broken within 3 days.
In a quotation that comes from the article I was talking about, Max Eastman in the Literary Mind in 1931 said that, quote, Joyce told me that into the prose of the little book in question, Anna Livia Pluribel, he had woven the names of 500 rivers. He told me, I remember, that he liked to think how some far day way off in Tibet or Somaliland, some lad or lass in reading that little book would be pleased to come upon the name of his or her own home river. So he was really pushing to sort of take things that were really maybe obscure to most readers, and that would make this a lot more universal. But then Joyce is claiming 500 rivers. But then, as is set out in an excellent post on Peter Crisp's Joyce blog, From Swerve of Shore to Bend of Bay, readers have found more than twice that number in the chapter. There are 1,117 rivers that are listed in Raphael Sleepon's Finnegans Wake Extensible Elucidation Treasury, which is a just amazing spreadsheet of all of the water puns that are in here. So 1,117. While ALP does represent the River Liffey, the other hundreds of rivers named are her, quote, fluvial maids of honour, all running together to constitute a whole. So the idea of this oneness of all the water from all the rivers around the world that run into a single spot, obviously evaporated and then rained and then all the water. So it's a really beautiful image of the idea that ALP as the Liffey is also all of the water in the world. And I also will say that our trusty resource, finwake.com, has an enriched chapter 1.8. So when you go into that chapter, when you go to the notes, it actually has little pop-ups of pictures of all the different rivers.
That's cool.
that are being referenced. So if anyone's interested in finding their river, you can see images there. I don't know if it's exhaustive, but it certainly is. There's a bit of bits and pieces in. So yeah, as I said, for a great summary of the moments throughout the chapter, Edna O'Brien's article is really indispensable. As soon as she started talking about what was happening in the chapter, I kind of tuned out because that's not what this podcast is about. We're here to read it, and then there may be details that I missed, but. Because this podcast has nothing to do with illuminating things, so I'm not going to go into any detail that she talked about, but I'm going to let Joyce speak for himself. So this week, I've decided that I'm going to attempt a solo summit of this mountain. I'm going to do 1/8 by myself in its entirety, just to test my fortitude. And we're going to do it all in one go. We're not going to break this up into 2 sections like we have before. I'm going to hit 20 pages in one go. There's a chance that I'll tap out. I don't want to, but I may just get to the point where it's just too much. And this also forces TJ to stay on book. Yes, so TJ will be back reading next week, I promise. I just wanted to try this one time. Incidentally, I will say that on Peter Crisp's blog post about this chapter, he also talks about he has a Finnegans Wake reading group, which are quite common, and there's a lot of these around the place. But he and a collection of his friends would meet weekly online for a couple of hours a week to read and discuss just this chapter, and it took them 9 months.
Nah, couldn't be me, dog. Couldn't be me, dog.
We will not be taking 9 months. We'll give it maybe 45 minutes, but yeah, we'll see how we go. As always, we're reading from the Penguin Modern Classics edition of Finnegans Wake, published in 2000 with a foreword by Seamus Dean. Today we'll be reading the entirety of Chapter 1/8 from pages 196 to 216 in this edition. This is a segment that is titled Anna Livia by the Oxford World's Classic edition of 2012, which also includes brief summaries of what is happening in each subsection, which we will address at the end of the reading. And now, without further ado, Finnegans Wake. Oh, tell me all about Anna Livia. I want to hear all about Anna Livia. Well, you know Anna Livia? Yes, of course, we all know Anna Livia. Tell me all. Tell me now. You'll die when you hear. Well, when the old Cheb went fut and did what yes, I know, go on. Wash, quit, and don't be dabbling. Tuck up your sleeves and loosen your tapes. And don't butt me. Hike when you bend. Or whatever it was they feed to make out he thried to 2 in the fiendish park. He's an awful old rep. Look at the shirt of him. Look at the dirt of it. He has all my water black on me. And it's steeping and stooping since this time last wick. How many goes is it, I wonder, I washed it? I know by heart the places he likes to sail, dirty devil, scorching my hand and starving my famine to make his private linen public. Wallop it well with your battle and clean it. My wrists are rusty, rubbing the mould all stains. And the neepers of wet and the gangers of sin is it. What was it did he a tale at all on animal Sendai? And how long was he under lock and knee? It was put in the news is what he did, Nices and Priors, the king fiercest Humphrey, with Elisus distilling exploits and all. But Tom's will till, I know he well, temp unnamed will hist for no man. As you spring, so shall you neep. Oh, the rufty old rap, minxing marriage and making loof. Reeve Gooch was right, and Reeve Drugged was sinistrous. And the cut of him, and the strut of him, how he used to hold his head as high as a Howarth, the famous old Duke Alien, with a hump of grandeur on him like a walking weasel rat. And his Derry's own drawl, and his Cork's own blather, and his doubting stutter, and his Galloway swank. Ask Lictor Hackett, or Lector Reed, of Garda Growley, or the boy with the billy club. How elster is he a called at all? Kirpel? Huge's caput, early fowler. Or where was he born? Or how was he found? Gothland, this town on the Cattegat? New Hunshire, conquered on the Merrimack. Who blocksmit her saft anvil, or yelled lep to her pail? Was her bands never loosened in Adam and Eve's, or were him and her but captain spliced? For mine ether duck I thee drake, and by my wild gaze I thee gander. Flowian mount on the brink of time makes wishes and fears for a happy isthmus. She can show all her lines with love license to play, And if they don't remarry, that hook and I may. Oh, Passmore that, and Oxus another. Dom 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 dom, and his wee folio. Was his help insured in the Stork and Pelican against Bungalars, Flu, and third risk parties? I heard he dug good tin with his doll, Delvan first and Dovlin after, when he raped her home, Sabrina Thor, in a parakeet's cage by dredgerous lands and devious delts, playing catched and mithed with the gleam of her shadow, if a flick had been there to pop up and pepper him. Past old Minsmance and Mason's old foe, and the rest of incurables and the last of immurables, the quaggy wag for stumbling. Who sold you that jack-o'-lantern's tail? Pemmican's pasty pie. Not a grass hoop to ring her, not an ant's grain of ore. In a gabbard he barked it, the boat of life, from the harbourless Invercan O'Keen till he spied the loom of his landfall, and he loosed 2 croakers from under his tilt, the grand Phoenician rover. By the smell of her kelp they made the pigeon house. Like fun they did. But where was himself, the timoneer? That merchant man he surveyed the scutties right over the wash, his camelier's burnous breezing up on him, till with his runagate Baumpris he rode and burst her bar. Pilco Mayo, suck Toctowan, and the whales away with the grayling. Tune your pipes and fall a-humming, you born Egypt, and you're nothing short of one. Well, tell me soon and curb your escumo. When they saw him shoot swift up her she-besheath like any gay Lord Salomon, her bulls they were roaring, surfed with spree. Boyarka Bua, Boyana Bue. He earned his little bunbath hard, our staley bred, the trader. He did. Look at here. In this wet of his prow. Don't you know he was cult a baron of the brine, Wasserborn the water baby? Havermara, so he was. HCE has a codsfic E. Sure, he's nearly as bad her as him herself. Who? Anna Livia? Aye, Anna Livia. Do you know she was calling back bandit Sals from all around Nyumbanu, Chambachu, to go in till him, her erring chief, and tickle the pontiff Acy Oicy? She was? Got a pot. Yisul the Limat, as El Negro winced when he wanced in La Plate. Oh, tell me all I want to hear. How loft she was lift in a laddery dextro. A coney wink after the bunting fell. Letting on she didn't care, Sina Fitza, Miss Absentee, him man in possession, the proxenate. Proxenate, and what is that? Eme for your rusher, Hondu jargon. Tell us in franca lingua, and call a spate a spate. Did they never sherry you Ebro at school, you anti-abecedarian? It's just the same as if I were to go par exemplam in Conservancy's cause out of telekinesis and proxenate you. For coxit's sake, and is that what she is? Bot Lettle, I thought she'd act that lower. Didn't you spot her in her wine dog wobbling up on an ossuary chair with the music before her all cuneiform letters, pretending to ribble a reedy dirge on a fiddle she bogans without a band on? Sure she can't fit in a D with bow or abandon. Sure she can't, tis to suck. Well, I never now heard the like of that. Tell me more. Tell me most. Well, old Humber was as gloamin' as Grampus, with the tears as his Thor, and the buboes for ages, and neither bowman nor shot abroad, and bales all brant on the crests of Rockies, and near a lamp in kitchen nor church, and giants' holes in Grafton's causeway, and death-cap mushrooms round Funglas grave, and the great tribune's barrow all Darnell's Ocumeli. Sitang Sambra on his set, Drammen and Drommen, usking queasy quizzes of his rollful continents, his child linen scarf to encourage his obsequies, where he'd check their depths in that Mormon's Thames, bequesting and hand settle, hop, step, and a deep end, with his berths in their toiling moil, his swallower open from swolf to fore, and the snipes of the gutter pecking his crocks, hunger striking all alone and holding doomsdag over Hunselv, dreeing his weird with his dander up and his fringe combed over his eyes, and droming on loft till the sight of the sterns after swarthy couse and weedy brooks, and the tits of Buddy and the loits of Pest, and to peer was parish worth theta mess. You'd think all was Dodo belonging to him, how he dermed a drance endurance vile. He had been belching for 7 years, and there she was, Ava Livia. She daren't catch a winkle of sleep, purling around like a chit of a child, wender wander, a finger thick, in a lap summer skirt and damazon cheeks, for to iss him bonjour to her dear dubber Dan. With new phrases and sue from his magias, and an odd time she'd cook him up blooms of fisk and lay to his heart's foot her meddery yeegis, yayis, and Stanish beacons on Toask, and a cupin have so wishy-washy of Greenland's tay, or a zoopgan of Korf Mucko and Sable, or Saikang Sukri, or his ale of ferns in true art pewter, and a Shinko bread, hand jambo banner, for to place that man hogstay his stomacher till her pyrrhic knees shrunk to nutmeg graters, while her toggle joints shuck with goit, and as rash as she'd russ, with her peak-load of vivers up on her sieve, me to wear a rage it swales and rises. My hardy heck, he'd cast them from him, with a stir of scorn, as much as to say, you sow and you sows, if he didn't peg the plateau on her tore. Believe you me, she was safe enough. And then she'd ask to vistule a hymn, the heart bowed down, or the rakes of Mallow, or Celli Michel's La Cumnera un Vermicelli, or a Balfi bit of old Joe Robertson. Such o fuffing a fifing would cut you in two. She'd bait the hen that crowed on the terrace of Babel. What harm if she knew how to cockle her mouth, and not a mag out of hum no more than out of the mangle weight? Is that a faith? That's the fact. Then riding the Ricka and Roya Romanch, Anona, Gebroren, aristocrat Nivea, doctor of sense and art, with sparks, pity flickerthims funkling her fan, Anna Froistovering tresses dashed with viravilles, while the prom beauties shrieked nith their bearers' skins, in a period gown of changeable jade that would robe the wood of two cardinals' chairs and crush poor Cullen and smother McCabe. Oh, Blazercate! There's poor Patches, and braming to him down the feed chute, with her femtifix kinds of fondling endings, the pootha rambling off her nose. Vuggy Barney, Wickery Mandy, hello, Ducky, please don't die! Do you know what she started cheaping after, with a choicey voicey, like Water Glucks or Madame Delba to Rose Zurich? You'll never guess. Tell me. Phoebe, dearest, tell me, and I loved you better, you know. And letting on hoon var daft about the warbly sangs from over Holman, high hell skirt, saw ladies hen smoker, lily hung pigger. And so and so on, and so forth, in a tone sonora, and bother below, like Berry in his sandy coat, so umvelocy, as deaf as a yawn the stult. Go away, poor defo dearie, you're only teasing. Anna live? As chalk as my judge. And didn't she up in sorgs and go and trot doon and stand in her duro, puffing her old dudheen, and every servant, silly girl, or winsome farmerette walking the pile-in roads, Sawy, Funderly, Dairy, or Mary, Millicure, Orny, or Graw? Didn't she make her simp or sign to slip inside by the Sullyport? You don't say the silly post. Beduist, but I do, calling them in one by one. To block bed'em here the Shubenekaddy, and legging a jig or so on the sill to show them how to shape their benders, and the dainty how to bring to mind the gladdest garments out of sight, and all the way of a maid with a man, and making a sort of cackling noise like 2 and a penny or half a crown, and holding up a silver shiner. Lordy, did she so? Well, of all the ones ever I heard, throwing all the nice little whores in the world at him. To any captured wench, you wish of no matter what sex of pliciful ways to add a Tamar, a Lizzie, a Lossie, to hug and have haven in Humpy's apron. And what was the wiry rhymer she made? Odette, tell me the Trent of it, while I'm lathering hail out of Dennis Florence McCarthy's combis. Rise it, flut ye pain peanut. I'm dying down off of my iodine feet until I learn Anna Livia's Cushling Loo, that was writ by one and read by two and truth by a pool in the parko. I can see that. I see you are. How does it tummel? Listen now. Are you listening? Yes. Id need I am. Tarn your ors, isern in. By earth and the cloudy, but I badly want a brand new bankside. Bedampen I do, and a plumper at that. For the putty affair I have is wore out, so it is sitting, yapping, and waiting for my old Dane Hodder Dodderer, my life in death companion, my frugal key of our larder, my much altered camel's hump, my joint spoiler, my May moon's honey, my fool to the last Decemberer, to wake himself out of his winter's doze and bore me down like he used to. Is there Irwill, a lord of the manor, or a knight of the shire at strike, I wonder, that'll dip me in a dace or two in cash for washing and darning his worshipful socks for him, now we're run out of horse brose and milk? Only for my short British bed, made's as snug as it smells. It's out I'd lep, and off with me to the Slobs Della Tolka or the Plage o' Contarf, to feel the gay air of my salt-troubling bay, and the race of the Saywint me up me embouchure. On. Tell me more. Tell me every tiny teen. I want to know every single ingule, down to what made the potters fly into Jag's hole, and why were the vassals vet. That Homer fever's winning me wome. If a mayhun of the horse but hard me, we'd but be bund cordyboy, meet a scaragal. Well, now comes the hazel hatchery part. After Clondalkin at the King's Inns, we'll soon be there with the freshest. How many Alevines had she in Toul? I can't rightly read you that. Close only knows. Some say she had 3 figures to fill and confined herself to 111, one by one, making Mina Cuminamoyas, Olaf Lamb, et all that pack. We won't have room in the kirkyard. She can't remember half the cradle names she smacked on them by the grace of her boxing bishop's infallible slipper. The Cain for Cund, and Abels for Eolf, and Either Nathan for Nathoth, yea. 100 and how? They did well to rechristen her Plahurabel. Oh, Lorelei! What a Lord and Lloyds! Hey-ho! But it's quite on the cards. She'll shed more and merrier, twills and trills, spare fours and spoil fives, Nordishkis and sudsievers and eyes and nines to a litter. Grandfathering Nap and Mess of Misery and the knave of all knaves and the joker. Hee-haw. She must have been gadabout in her day, so she must, more than must. Shoal she was, gid-gad. She had flumen of her own. Then a toss snare scared that lass, so ame mo. That's a gapo. Tell me, how cam she camlin through all her fellows, the necker she was, the dive line, casting her perils before our swains from font in Mont to Tidingtown, and from Tidingtown till Habit, linking one and knocking the next, tapping a flank and tipping a jutty, and palling and petering out and gliding by on her east way. Why, who was the first who ever burst? Someone he was, wherever they are, in a tactic attack or in single combat. Tinker, Tyler, soldier, sailor, pieman piece, or polister man. That's the thing I'm always on edge to ask. Push up and push Varder and come to uphill headquarters. Was it Waterloo's year after Grattan or Flood, or when maids were in ark, or when 3 stood hosting? Fideris will find where the doubt arises, like Neiman from Neergens found the Nihil. Worry you, scion foe, Alburn, O answer. Untie the gem man's fistinots, Cuvic and Nuancy. She can't put her hand on him for the moment. Tes Thelon Langilo, walking weary. Such a loon way bashwards to row. She said herself she hardly knows who on the annals her graveller was, a dynast of Leinster, a wolf of the sea, or what she did, or how blithe she played, or how, when, why, where, or who off on she jumped at her, and how it was gave her away. She was just a young, thin, pale, soft, shy, slim slip of a thing then, sauntering by Silvermoon Lake, and he was a heavy, trudging, lurching lay-abroad of Curragman, making his hay for those for whose sun to shine on, as tough as the oak trees, Pete's be with them, used to rustle that time down by the dykes of Killing Kildare, for forced fell Foss with a plash across her. She thought she sank neath the ground with nymphant shame when he gave her the tigress eye. Oh, happy fault! Me wish it was he. You're wrong there, corrigibly wrong. 'Tisn't only tonight you're anachronistic. It was ages behind when nullers were nowhere in County Wickenlow, Garden of Erin. Before she ever dreamt she'd lave Kilbride and go foaming under Horse-Past Bridge, with the great southwestern wind storming her traces, and the Midlands grain waster a sark for her track, to wend her ways by and by, row becker or worse, to spin and to grind, to swab and to thrash, for all her golden lifey in the barley fields and penny lots of Humphreys ford of Hurdlestown, and lie with a land leaper, Wellington or her, less the Lagos of girly days, for the dove of the Junus. Was it? Izod? Are you sarthing sewer? Not where the fin fits into the morn, not where the Nor takes leave of Bloem, not where the braid of arts the fair, not where the Moy changes her minds twixt Cullen and Con, tween Cun and Colin, or where Neptune sculled and Tritonville rode and Leandros 3 bumped heroines 2? Nay, Narav, nine, noni, nos. Then whereabouts in Ow or Avoca? Was it yist with whist, or Lucan yoken, or where the hand of man has never set foot? Tell me where the fairy first time. If you will, I will, if you listen. You know the Dinkledale of Luggalaw? Well, there once dwelt a local Hermite. Michael Arklow was his reverend name, with many a sign I aspersed his lavabibs. And one Venner's Derrig in June July, oh so sweet and oh so cool and so limber she looked, Nance the Nixie, Nanon le Esco, in the silence, in the sycamores, all listening, the kindling curves you simply can't stop feeling. He plunged both of his newly anointed hands, the core of his cushlas, in her singy Mary saffron strumens of hair, parting them and soothing her and mingling it that was deep dark and ample like this red bog at sundown. By that veil Valcloth's lucid glack, the rainbow's heaven arches wronged arranged her. Aphrodisiac galbs, her enamelled eyes indigoing him on to the verge violetan. Wish a wish, why a why, Mavro. Letty lurks, laughing light, throw those laurels now on her daft Taze song Petrock. Mass! But the magic Wavis has elfin anon meshes, and Simba the slayer of his ogre is slewed. He cuddle not help himself, thirso that hot on him, he had to forget the monk in the man so, rubbing her up and smoothing her down, he based his lips in smiling mood, kiss after kissakushk, as he warned her never on Ananapogues of the freckled forehead. While you'd pass Sechera, he hilt her soof, but she rose 2 feet higher in her Aishna estimation, and steps on stilts ever since. That was kisser healing with Bancher for balm. Oh, wasn't he the bold priest? And wasn't she the naughty Livy? Nautic Nam is now her naven. 2 lads in scouch breeches went through her before that, barefoot Burn and Wallamy Wade, Lugnaquilla's noblesse picks, before she had a hint of a hair at her fanny to hide, or a bosom to tempt a birch canoodler, not to mention a bulgic Potterhouse barge. And ere that again, lader, all unready, too faint to buoy the fairest rider, too frail to flirt with a cygnet's plume, she was licked by a hound, chirrita, while pooing her pea, pure and simple, on the spur of the hill in old Capure, in birdsong and shearing time. But worst of all, the Wiggly Lively, he sidestepped out by a gap in the Devil's Glen, while Sally, her nurse, was sound asleep in a sloot, and Fi fell over a spillway before she found her stride, and lay and wriggled in all the stagnant black pools of a rainy under a fallow coo, and she laughed innocence free, with her limbs aloft and a whole drove of maiden hawthorns blushing and looking askance upon her. Drop me the sound of the fine horn's name, Matthew or Matee, Sombogger was wiseness. And drip me why in the Flinders was she frickled, and trickle me through was she Marcel waved, or was it weirdly a wig she wore? And whitside did they droop their glows in their florry, a back to whist or a front to see, in a fear to hear the deer so near, or longing loathing longing? Are you in the swim or are you out? Oh, go in, go on, go an! I mean, about what you know. I know right well what you mean. Ruther? You'd like the quaffs and gwimps, snouty, and me to do the greasy job on old Veronica's wipers? What I am rancing now, and I'll thank you, is it a penny or is it a surplus? Aran, where's your nose, and where's the starch? That's not the Vestra benediction spell. I can tell from here by their eau de cologne and the scent of their odour that they're Mrs. McGrath's. And you ought to have aired them. They'd moist come off 'em. Creases in silk they are, not Crampton lawn. Baptiste me, father, for she has sinned. Through her catchment ring she freed them easy, and with her hips hurrahs for her knees dontelleries. The only par with frills and old the plain. So they are, I declare. Well and well. If tomorrow keeps fine, who'll come tripping to sightsee? Howl. Ask me next what I haven't got. The Belvederean exhibitioners, in their cruisery caps and Oars Club colours. What who they band, and what ho they buck, and here is her nubily letters too. Ellis on key and scarlet thread, linked for the world on a flush-coloured field. Annan exi after, to show they're not Laura Keons. Oh, may the diabolo twist your safety pin, you child of Mammon, Kinsella's Lilith. Now who has been tearing the leg of her drawers on her? Which leg is it? The one with the bells on it. Rinse them out and aston along with you. Where did I stop? Never stop. Continturation. You're not there yet. I am still waiting. Garon. Well, after it was put in the Mercy Cordial Menicant Siderdag Zinde Muniday Wake Shrift, or for once they sullied their white kidloves, chewing cuds after their dinners of cheekin and beggin, with their show of us it here and their mind out of that and there when you quite finished with the reading material. Ever the sneed that snowed in his whoring hair had a scunner against him. Thor, Sabba, Savuto, score her chuffic squizure. Everywhere erif you went and every bung you ever dropped into, in sit or suburb or in addled areas, the Rose and Bottle or Phoenix Tavern or Powers Inn or Jude's Hotel, or wherever you scoured the countryside from Nannywater to Vartryville, or from Portre Latine to the Luton Quarter, you found his icon etched upside, tipside down, or the corner boys cammicking his guy, and Morris the man with the roll of Royce in his Turgos the Turrible, Everopean cheek house, unskimmed suet and yahoot, Yaman now cheek me, arm this way make, Fatima, half turn. Reeling and railing around the local as the Pihos piped and Ubengees twanged, with Oddfellow's triple tiara Busby, rotunda rinking around his scalp, like Pete by the Neva or Pete over Mere. This is the houseman all paven and stoned, that cribbed the cabin that never was owned, that cocked his leg and henned his egg. Than the mauldron rabble around him an aero page, fracassing a great Bincan Cagnan with their timpan crowders. Mind your grim father. Think of your ma. Hing the Hong is his Jove's hang nopen. Lilta Bolero bulling a law. She swore on Crossticks 9, windabout she's be level with all the snags of them yet. Pa the vulnerable virgin's Mary Del Dame. So she said to herself she'd frame a plan to fake a shine, the mischief maker, the like of it you never heard. What plan? Tell me quick and dongo so cruelled. What the Mirtha did she make? Well, she burgoned a zack bag, a chamois mail sack, with the lend of a loan of the light of his lampion, off one of her swap sons, Sean the Post. And then she went and consulted her chapbooks, old Mott Moore, Casey's Euclid, and the fashion display, and made herself tidal to join in the masquerade. Oh, gig goggle of giguels, I can't tell you how. It's too screaming to rise, oh, rabbit it all. Minaha, Minahai, Minahe, Minaho. Oh, but you must really make my hear it gurgle, like the fairest gargle in a dusty dargle. By the holy hell of Mudheart, I swear I'd pledge my chance of getting to heaven through Tiri and Killy's mount of impiety to hear it all, every word. Oh, leave me my faculties, woman, a while. If you don't like my story, get out of the punt. Well, have it your own way, so. Here, sit down and do as you bid. Take my stroke and bend to your bow. Forward in and pull your over the poise. Lisp it slaney and crisp it quiet. Deal me longsome. Tongue your time now. Breathe that deep. Though it's the fair way. Hurry slow and shalt you go. Lend us your blessed ashes here till I scrub the cannon's underpants. Flow now. O'amore and pooly. First she let her hair fall down and flustered it to her feet in Teviot's winding coils. Then, mother naked, she shampooed herself with gala water and frangent pistana mud, whopper and lure, from crown to sole. Next she greased the groove of her keel, warths and wares and mole and itcher, with anti-fouling butterscotch, and turpentide and serpentine, with the leaf mould she ushered round prunella aisles and the slats done, quincy-cunct, all over her little Mary. Peeled gold of waxwork her jelly belly, and her grains of incense anguille bronze. And after that she wove a garland for her hair. She pleated it, she plaited it, of meadowgrass and river flags, the bulrush and water weeds, and of fallen griefs of weeping willow. Then she made her bracelets and her anklets and her armlets and a jetty amulet for necklace of clicking cobbles and pattering pebbles and rumble down rubble, Richmond and rare, of Irish runa stones and shell marble bangles. That done, a dork of smut to her airy eye, Anushka Litushevich Puflova, and the lollipop cream to her lilipines, and the pick of the paint box for her pommettes, from strawberry reds to extra violets, and she shendered her Baudelaire maids to his affluence, Silegia Grand and Kershi Real, the two Shersines, with respects from his missus, Sipi and Suery, and a request might she pass of him for a minikin. A call to pay and light a taper in Brie Honorosa back in the sprizzling. The cock striking mine, the stall's bridely sign, there's Zambosi waiting for me. She said she wouldn't be half her length away. Then, as soon as the lump on his back was turned, with her mealy bag slang over her shoulder, Anna Livia, oyster face, forth of her basin, came. Describe her. Hustle along. Why can't you? Spits on the item while it's hot. I wouldn't miss her for earthing or nothing. Not for the lucre of Lomba Strait, oceans of God, I most'll hear that. Oh, presta, Lesti, before Julia sees her, Ishikari and Washkamisgad, the Karatatimony. Whole lady fair, duodecimo rune, Bonaventura, Malagasy. What had she on, the little old oddity? How much did she scallop, harness and weights? Here she is, Amnesty Ann. Call her Calamity Electrifies Man. No electress at all, but old mopper necessity. Angan mother of Injons. I'll tell you a test, but you must sit still. Will you hold your peace and listen well to what I am going to say now? It might have been 10 or 20 to 1 of the night of all close or the next of April, when the flip of her hoogly igloo flapped and out-toe tippet a bushman woman, the dearest little mamma ever you saw, nodding all around her, all smiles, with M's of embarrass and O's for awe, between two ages, a Judy queen, not up to your elb. Quick, look at her cute and sace her quirk, for the bixer she lives, the slicker she grows. Savus and Tagus. No more? Where in the oath did you ever pick a lambay chop as big as a battering ram? Aye, you're right. I'm apt to forgetting, like Liviam Little did love me long. The length of my hoff, I say. She wore a ploughboy's nail-studded clogs, a pair of ploughfields in themselves, a sugarloaf hat with a gaudy quiverty peak, and a band of gorse for an ornament, and 100 streamers dancing off it, and a gilded pin to pierce it. Owl-glassy bicycles boggled her eyes, and a fish-net zev veil for the sun not to spoil the wrinklings of her hide aspects. Potato rings buckled the lorse lobes of her load snarers. Her nude Cuba stockings were samo spot-speckled. She sported a Gallagher shimmy of haze vapor tinto that never was fast till it ran in the washing. Stout stays, the rivals, lined her length. Her blood-orange bock knickers, or two in one garment, showed natural boggers, fancy fastened, free to undo. Her black-striped tan Joseph was sequin-sewn and teddy-bear lined, with wavy rush-green epaulets, and a let-down here and there of royal swan's ruff. A blaze of gaspers stuck in her hay-rope garters. Her civvy corduroy coat with an alpha bet buttons was boundaried round with a 2-bar tunnelled belt. A fourpenny bit in each pocket side weighed her safe from the blow-away windrush. She had a clothes peg tight astride on her jokey's nose, and she kept on grinding at something quaint in her fumy mouth, and the reek of the fuve of the tail of the gowan and her snuff-drab Seola's skirt trailed 50-odd Irish miles behind her Lungar roads. Hell's bells. I'm sorry I missed her. Sweet Gumpy Tum, and nobody fainted. But in whelk of her mouths was her nase alight? Everyone saw her, and the doused little Delia looked a bit queer. Lotsy trotsy mind the pottle. Missus be good and don't fall in the say. Fanny poor heck she must have chowed. Kick'em's a frumpier ere you saw, making mush mullets eyes at her boy's dobelon. And they crowned her their Chariton queen, all the maids. Of the May? You don't say. Well, for her, she couldn't see herself. I reck next war for the darling murrayed her mirror. She did? Mercy me. There was a chorus of druth-dropping, surfacemen, boom-slanging and plug-chewing, fruit-eyeing and flower-feeding, in contemplation of the fluctuation and the undefecation of her filamentation, lolling and leasing on North Laser's wall, all eel-fair week by the Duke of Joyce, as soon as they saw her meander by that maritime way in her grass winter's weeds, and twigged who was under her archdeaconess bonnet, Avondale's fish and Clarence's poison, Sedge's and Aneba, wit upon crutches to Master Bates. Between our two South Sates and the granite there warming, or her face has been lifted, or Alp has been doped. But what was the game in her mixed baggy thatty? Just the tembo in her tumbo, or pilly-pilly from her pepper pot? Sass and tass and specious bizazz? And where in thunder did she plunder? Before the battle or after the ball? I want to get it frisk from the source. I or bet my beard it's worth while poaching on. Shake it up, do, that's a good old son of a ditch. I promise I'll make it worth your while, and I don't mean maybe, nor yet with a good for. Spay me proof, and I'll tell you true. Well, a run Gironde in Waveney lined, a ring a rumour she patted and swung and sidled, and dribbling her boulder through narrower mosses, the Delisky drear on her drier side, and the wild vetch vine agin us, Cuara here, Carrero there, not knowing which medway or weeser to strike it, Ada rider making Chattahoochee all to her ain chichu, like Santa Claus at the cree of the pale and puny, nistling to hear for their tiny hearties, her arms encircling Isola Bella, then running with a reconciled Romus and Reams, on like a lech to be off like a dart, then bathing dirty hands spatters with spittle, with a Christmas box apiece for each and every one of her childer, the birthday gifts they dreamt they gave her, the spoiled she fleetly laid at our door. On the mat, by the pouch, and in under the cellar, the rivulets ran a flood to sea, the Glacier boys, the Polynutes, out of the Pornschnop onto the pyre, and they all about her, juvenile leads and ingenueers, from the slime of their slums and artisans' wellings, rickets and riots like the smiley boys at their viceroy's levee. Vivivian, little Anshan, Viello Anna, high life, Singer Sasula, O Susuria, Orson Sedulcius, hasn't she Tombra, chipping her and raising a bit of a chur, or a jerry every dive she'd neb in her culdy sacco of wabash she rabbed and reach out all her Monday merchandise, poor souvenir as per recorder, and all foresaw a ring-a-rung, stinkers and healers, laggards and prime lads, her firstborn sons and dribble-dairy daughters, 1,001 of them, and wicker potluck for each of them, for evil and ever, and kicks the book. A tinker's ban and a barrow to boil his billy for Gypsy Lee, a cartridge of cockaleeky soup for Chummy the guardsman, for sulky Pender's acid nephew deltoid drops, curiously strong. A cough and a rattle and wild rose cheeks for poor Piccolina Petite McFarlane, a jigsaw puzzle of needles and pins and blankets and shins between them for Isabel, Jezebel, and Llewellyn Marriage, a brazen nose and pig-iron mittens for Johnny Walker Begg, a paper flag of the Saints and Stripes for Kivanine O'Dare, puff for Pudge Craig, and a night marching here for Tecker Tim Tom Bigby, Waterleg and gumboots each for Bully Hayes and Hurricane Hartigan, a prodigal heart and fatted calves for Buck Jones, the pride of Conliffe, a loaf of bread and father's early aim for Val from Skibbereen, a jaunting car for Larry O'Doolan, the Ballyclea Jackeen, a seasick trip on a government ship for Teague O'Flanagan, a louse and trap for Jerry Coyle, slush mince pies for Andy Mackenzie, a hair clip and clack dish for pencilless Peter, that 12 sounds look for G.V. Brooke, a drowned doll to face downwards for modest sister Anne Mortimer, altar falls for Blanchise's bed, wild ears breechettes for Magpeg Wappington, to Sue Dot a big eye, to Sam Dash a false step, makes snakes in clover, picked and scotched, and a Vatican viper catches visa for Patsy Presbys, a rise every morning for Standfast Dick, and a drop every minute for Stumblestone Davy. Screwboat beads for Beatified Biddy, 2 apple tweed stools for Eva Moberly, for Sarah Philpott a Jordan Vale Tyrone, a pretty box of Petty Fibs powder for Eileen Aruna to whiten her teeth and outflash Helen Ahong, a whipping top for Eddie Lawless, for Kitty Coleraine a Bottomans Lane, a Pennywise for her foolish picture, a putty shovel for Terry the Pork Puckorn, an eponymous mask for Promoter Dunn, a Neaster egg with twice-dated shell and dynamite right for Pavel the Curate, a cholera morbus for Man in the Clock, a star and a Jerton for Draper and Dean, for Will of the Wisp and Barney the Bark, 2 mangolds noble to sweeten their bitters, for Oliver Bound away in his fray, for Shumus thought little, a crown he feels big, a Tibertine's pile with a Congo's wood cross on the back for Sonny Twimjim, a Praises Be and Spare Me days for Brian the Bravo, Penty Plenty of Pity with Luby lashings of lust for Alona, Lena, Magdalena, for Camilla, Dramilla, Ludmilla, Mamilla, a bucket, a packet, a book, and a pillow. For Nancy Shannon, a Chwami brooch. For Dora Riparia Hopenwater, a cooling douche and a warming pan. A pair of Barney Braggs for Wally Ma. A hairpin slate pencil for Elsie Oram to scratch her Toby, doing her best with her vulgar fractions. An old age pension for Betty Belazar. A bag of the blues for Funny Fitz. A Missa Pro Misa for Taff the Taff. Jill, the spoon of a girl, for Jack, the broth of a boy. A Rogerson Crusoe's Fridays fast for Catechus Angelus Rubiconenstein. 366 Poplin for a reverie warp in the Weaver's Woof for Victor Huguenot. A stiff-steadied rake and good varians mucks for Kate the Cleaner. A hole in the ballad for Hosty. 2 dozen of cradles for JFXP Coppinger. 10 pountain on the pop for Dolphins born with 5 spoiled squibs for Infanta. A letter to last a lifetime for Maggie by the ash pit. The heftiest frozen meat woman from Lusk to Lievenbad for Phelim the Ferry. Spars and Speranza and Symposium Spirit for decayed and blind and gouty Goff. A change of knaves and joys of ills for Armoricus Tristram Amor St. Lawrence. A guillotine shirt for Reuben Redbreast, Hempen Supenstats for Brennan on the Moor, an oaken knee for Conditor Sawyer, and Muscoboits for the great tropical Scot, a C3 peduncle for Carmelite Kane, a sunless map of the month, including the sword and stamps for Seamus O'Shawn the Post, a jackal with hide for Brown but Nolan, a stone-cold shoulder for Don Joe Vance, all lock and no stable for Honour-bright Merrytrix, a big drum for Billy Dunboyne, a guilty goldeny bellows below me blow for me for Ida, and a hushaby rocker El Travatoot for Who is Silver? Where is he? Whatever you like to swilly to swash, Eunice or Yenesi, Lagan or Niga, for Festus King and Roaring Peter and Frisky Shorty and Treacle Tom and Obie Bean and Sully the Thug and Master McGrath and Peter Cloran and O Delaware Rosser and Nerone McPaysom and whomever you chance to meet knocking around, and a pig's bladder balloon for Selina Susquehanna Stakelum. But what did she give to Pruda Ward and Caddy Canel and Peggy Quilty and Briary Brosner and Teasy Kieran and Ina Lappin and Muriel Massey and Susan Kamek and Melissa Bradogue and Flora Ferns and Fauna Fox Goodman and Gretna Greeny and Penelope Inglesant and Lesba Licking like Lethea Lime and Roxana Rohan with Sympatrica Sohan and Una Bina Laterza and Trina Lemesme and Philomena O'Farrell and Ermac Ellie and Josephine Foyle and Snake's Head Lily and Fountainoy Laura and Marie Xavier Agnes Daisy Frances de Sales Maclay. She gave them Ilka Madre's daughter a moonflower and a blood vein. But the grapes that ripe before reason to them that divide their vine dress. So on Izzy, her shame maid, love shown befond her tears, as from Shem, her penmite, life past befoul his prime. My colonial, what a bagful. A bakerine's juicin' with tithe tillies to boot. That's what you may call a tale of a tub, and Hibernonian market. All that and more under one crinoline envelope if you dare to break the pork barrel seal. No wonder they'd run from her pison plague. Throw us your Hudson soap for the honour of claim. The wee taste the water left. I'll raft it black first thing in the marn. Merced moiled. Aye, and don't forget the records I loaned you. You've made all the swirls your sign of the current. Well, am I to blame for that if I have? Who said you're to blame for that if you have? You're a bit on the sharp side. I'm on the wide. Only snuffers cornets drift my way that the cracker divine chucks out of his cassock with her Esther Year's March Narcissus to make him recant his Vanity Fair. Foul strips of his Chinook's Bible I do be reading. Dodwell degustered but chickled with chuckles on the tittles is drawn on the tattle page. Signa gatito, facatio omo, e omo fufo. Ho, ho! Signor Gagdito Facciari Hidamo se ga facezza. Ha, ha! And de Windermere Dicta and Lefanu Sheridan's old house by the coachyard and Mill J on woman with ditto on the floss. Yeah, a swamp for Almeyer Mueller and a stone for his flossies. I know how racy they move his wheel. My hands are blackguard between Isker and Suda like that piece of patent Cheney there lying below. Or where is it, lying beside the sedge I saw it? Whango, my sorrow, I've lost it. Hey, mihi! With that turbary water, who could see? So near and yet so far, but oh, Gihon, I love it a gabba. I could listen to Moor and Muravar again. Regna under river, fleas do you float. Thick is the life for mere. Well, you know, or don't you, ken it, or haven't I told you every telling has a tailing, and that's the he and the she of it. Look, the dusk is growing, my branches loftier taking root, and my cold chair is gone ashly. Filer? Filu? What age is at? It soon is late, 'tis endless now, sen I or Erewhon last saw Waterhouse's cloth. They took it asunder, I heard them sigh. When will they reassemble it? Oh, my back, my back, my back! I'd want to go aches le pains. Ping pong! There's the bell for sex loites, and concepta descendus pray. Pang! Ring out the clothes, ring in the dew, God a vert the showers, and grant they a vase. Amen. Will we spread them here now? Aye, we will. Flip! Spread on your bank, and I'll spread mine on mine. Flip! That's what I'm doing. Spread. It's churning chill. Derwent is rising. I'll lay a few stones on the hostel sheets, a man and his bride embraced between them, else I'd have sprinkled and folded them only. And I'll tie my butcher's apron here. It's suety yet. The strollers will pass it by. 6 shifts, 10 kerchiefs, 9 to hold to the fire, and this for the code, the convent napkins 12, 1 baby's shawl. Good Mother Joseph knows, she said, whose head mutter snores? Deet aces. Warno are all her childer, say. In kingdom gone or power to come, or glory it be to them, Father. Alluvial, some here, more no more again lost alla stranger. I've heard tell that the same brooch of the Shannons was married into a family in Spain, and all the Dunders be duns in Markland's Vineland, beyond Brendan's herring pool, takes number 9 in Yanksy's hats. And one of Biddy's beads went bobbing till she rounded up lost history with a marigold and a cobbler's candle in a side strain of a main drain of a Manzina hurries off Bachelor's Walk. But all that's left of the last of the Mars in the loop of the years, prefixed them before, is one knee buckle and 2 hooks in the front. Do you tell me that now? I do, in troth. Ora por orbe and por las animas. Usas Allah, where umbas all. Metza, didn't you hear it a deluge of times, ufer and ufer, rispund to spund? You deed, I need. It's that irrawaddying I've stoke in my ears. It all but husheth the leethest as wound. Orinoco, what's your trouble? Is that the great Finn leader himself in his Joachimano on his statue riding the high horse there for Hengist? Father of otters, it is himself. Yon there, is it that? On Fallerine Common? You're thinking of Astley's Amphitheatre, where the bobby restrained you making sugar-stuck pouts to the ghost-white horse of the Peppers. Throw the cobwebs from your eyes, woman, and spread your washing proper. It's well I know your sort of slop. Flap. Ireland sober is Ireland stiff. Lord help you, Maria, full of grease. The load is with me. Your prayers, I sont zo. Madamagamagat. Were you lifting your elbow? Tell us, glazy cheeks, in Conway's Carrigurra canteen. What was I? What? Hobbledy hips? Flop. Your rear gates creaker rehuman bits your butts disagrees. Amn't I up since the damp dawn, Marthard Mary Olacook, with Corrigan's pulse and varicose veins, my promaxil smashed, Alice Jane in decline, and my one-eyed mongrel twice run over, soaking and bleaching boiler rags, and sweating cold, a widow like me, for to deck my tennis champion son, the laundryman with the lavender flannels? You won your Limpopo limp from the husky husses when collars and cuffs was heir to the town and your slur gave the stink to Carlo. Holy scamander, I zar it again, near the Golden Falls. Isis honest, saints of light, Zizare, subdue your noise, you humble creature. What is it but a blackberry growth, or the Dwyer Grey, ask them 4 old codgers owns? Are you Meenum Tarpey and Lyons and Gregory? I mean now, I thank all the 4 of them, and the roar of them that draves that stray in the mist, and old Johnny McDougall along with them. Is that the Poolbeg flash abeyant far, or a fireboat coasting near the Kishma, or a glow I behold within a hedge of my Gary come back from the Indies? Wait till the honeying of the loon, love. Dear Eva, little Eve, die. We die, Eve, little Eve, die. We see that wonder in your eye. We'll meet again. We'll part once more. The spot I'll seek, if the hour you'll find. My chart shines high where the blue milk's upset. Forgive me quick, I'm going. Bye-bye. And you, pluck your watch, forget me not, your even load, so save to journey's end. My sights are swimming thicker on me by the shadows to this place. I sow home slowly now by own way, Moy Valley way, Towie I true, Rathmine. Ah, but she was the queer old Scotia anyway, Anna Livia. Trinkettos. And sure he was the queer old bunts too, dear dirty dumpling, Foos the father of Fingalls and Dottergills. Gamma and Gaffer were all their gangsters. Hadn't he 7 dams to wive him? And every dam had her 7 crutches, and every crutch had its 7 hues, and each hue had a differing cry? Suds for me and supper for you, and the doctor's bill for Joe John. Before, he married his markets, cheap by foul, I know, like any Etrurian Catholic heathen, in their pinky, lemony, creamy burnies and their Turkish Indian mauves. But at Mildkidmas, who was the spouse? Then all that was fair, 'tis elven land, teams of times and happy returns, the Siam anew. Ordovico and Viricordo, Anna was, Anna is, plura bells to be. Northmen's thing made South folks' place, but how multi-pluritors made each one in person. Latin me that, my Trinity scholard, out of your Sanskrit into our Iran. Hercus, Silvus, Ebolaneses. He had bucket goat paps on him, soft ones for orphans. Ho, Lord, twins of his bosom, Lord save us. And ho, hey, what old men? Hot? his tittering daughters of Huck can't hear with the waters of the chittering waters of flittering bats, field mice, balk talk. Ho! Are you not gone a home? What, Tom Malone? Can't make with a balk of bats all thim liffering waters of. Ho, talk save us, my foos won't moose. I feel as old as on yonder elm. A tale told of Sean or Shem? All Livia's daughter sons, dark hawks near us. Night, night, my head halls. I feel as heavy as yonder stone. Tell me of John or Sean. Who were Shem and Sean, the living daughters, sons or daughters of? Night now. Tell me, tell me, tell me, elm. Night, night. Tell me tale of stem or stone. Beside the rivering waters, of hithering, thithering waters. Night. Oh, wow. Sometimes you say, I think this is a good idea, and then you get into it. It's like, I feel like people who run marathons who get 5 miles in and think, what have I done?
Every break, I was like, every time there was an indent, I was like, huh? Okay.
That was chapter 1-8 in its entirety from Finnegans Wake, and officially the end of book 1. TJ, what do you think?
Couple things. I found myself like trying to run through all the bodies of water that I knew on the globe and trying to find them as we went, which is probably not the correct thing to do. But also, if I'm being honest, I don't know. There were some moments in here that I definitely pulled out, but there was more like things that stood out to me in earlier sections. At least for me. That's just me.
Well, it's interesting when someone stakes their whole reputation on a chapter and you're like, all right, this is going to be good. And then you get there and you're like, okay, cool. But okay, I'm not sure what I expected.
Yeah. I think my expectations were just super high because of knowing the time he put into it and the fact that he says he stakes everything in this chapter. I thought the end kind of is one of those things that like sticks the landing and feels like the end of book 1 in a proper way. You know what I mean?
It's interesting that it has that frame around it, the washerwomen, at the side of the river, telling a story, and then they tell a story. One has the information, the other one wants the information, and so it's an easy structure to get behind because you go, oh, okay, well, I can see where we're going here, and then following all the way through so that until they part at the end of the day because as the sun goes down and night falls over this river, over this mythical river. But it's interesting, like a lot of the stuff that happens in there where Joyce spent 1,200 hours writing this 17-page chapter, or it was 20 pages in this edition, but he claimed it's 17, where 2 or 3 pages of that are listing presents that ALP gave to her children.
Yeah.
her 111 children. And you go, this is really fun to read, and it's kind of really quirky, and, I need someone to put together some, like a Santa Claus list with all of these these names on there. But yeah, it's some puzzling content in there. You think, is this vital content in your like flat? Your the chapter that's going to make your whole career worthwhile. But
I love the fact that it shows like, oh, ALP is just so giving in this way. These are all the things that she's done and given and all these other things. But I think it becomes difficult for me when the rest of the book one has been within the context of HCE, right? And so I with her getting this section, these 20 pages, I don't know. I was just expecting I don't know what I was expecting.
Mm-hmm.
I wasn't expecting that. Not that I'm mad about it. I just wasn't expecting that, if that makes sense.
I think Joyce doesn't want us to expect anything. I
Yeah.
think if we get what we're expecting, or if we finally get and come and go, this is the action right here, then I think that's disappointing to him. So, yeah, I mean, a lot of stuff happens. This is what the Oxford World Classic summarizes each of these sections as I read. I'm following the page and line numbering convention standard in the text. So we read 1-8, pages 196 to 216, and Livia. So from 196 to 200.32, washerwomen gossip about HCE and ALP, their first meeting, his glumness, her cooking eggs for him, then singing and even pimping for him, which is
I didn't get that part.
no. So yeah, some of these, every now and then when we read these summaries, I want to go back and sort of see if you can sort of find how that is, but we never do because that's not the point of this podcast. But
Yeah, there's one part that I'll point out that I was like, I wrote maybe, and then, but yeah.
yeah. 233 to 205.15, ALP's complaint, her many children and early sexual experiences, which I want to know how these washerwomen know all this stuff. Yeah, you got all this story. 205.16 to 209.17, HCE's fall and ALP's revenge on his detractors, and then her toilette. 209.18 to 212.19, her Pandora's box of gifts to the people, containing all the ills that flesh is heir to. And that's a quote from Ellman, page 564. And then from 212.20 to close, chat about washing, night comes on, the gossip becomes inaudible, they go their ways. So really, this frame is really interesting because I mean, again, we've had so much stuff about HCE, but HCE hasn't really been around to speak for himself. It's what other people are saying about HCE. And now we get to ALP, and we kind of expect something here, and ALP is then spoken of again.
In the same way, right.
Yeah. It's an interesting thing in that both characters do show up from time to time, and they have their moments, and they either are or are not affected by the gossip. But the main impressions that we get of these characters are of what other people say about them, which also then, when you extend this to the idea of HCE as Finn McCool, or as all of human history, or ALP as the rivers, of course, everything we do know about them has been spoken about them by someone else.
Right. Which makes sense. And
the gossip. I mean, what's the difference between gossip and mythology?
Very true. And I wrote down, like, on page 199, halfway through the page, there's a description of her as a finger thick, and and even just that description, I was like, okay, she's a skinny, frail sort of thing, right? That I thought was really interesting. And then I had where is it? There's a section where they talk about these two boys with these sort of trousers had gone through her, and I was like, is this what I think it is? Right. And so I think because of the metaphor of the river, I also started to wonder, I was like, what is river talk, versus like her as a person.
Yes. Yeah. And I feel as though, and a lot of it comes down to, like, Joyce is well known for very much eroticizing water and rivers. He has had a bit of a fetish for watching women pee in rivers. One of his things, and he was really excited about underwear, and so there's a lot of his own proclivities come out in Ulysses, and then also in this. So it's interesting that there really is that blurring. But of course, if we go back to the dream narrative, then of course there's blurring, and that's how that goes. I mean, Edna O'Brien says that Anna is his signature in his last lonely and embattled months, a time of mounting hostility towards Finnegans Wake, his daughter Lucia and his inspiratrice committed to an asylum, walking in the snow in Zurich with his little grandson, his eyes hidden with thick dark glasses, entrenched in that same darkness that he had, in high-hearted youth, pitied in his hero Ibsen. It was January 1941, Europe in the throes of war, and Joyce, his heart a drone, unknowingly on the brink of death.
Ugh, gosh.
So he's pouring a lot into this, but it seems like most of it is for his own edification, whether or not it's supposed to be accessible.
Yeah, I finally put the finger on what I guess I was expecting and what I was kind of caught back by is this idea that the earlier half of the book is about HCE and all the things that he has that people accuse him of, and and a lot of them are sexual exploits, and so I guess I expected, I don't want to say a pure version of ALP to come in, but it was like whenever page 209, it was like wit upon crutches to masturbates, and I was all like, okay, I was like, where's the juxtaposition here? But I do think that this is interesting in the way that uh, uh, HCE sexual exploits are listed versus ALP sexual exploits. You know what I mean? And just the way that they're talked about, where HCE is kind of dragged through the mud, where I don't get that same sort of feeling about ALP. It's like, this is just what she's done.
Yes. And we also have, this is one of the chapters, we don't have it for all the chapters, but this is one of the chapters where we have a recording of Joyce reading it out that was commissioned by linguistic psychologist C.K. Ogden, who was translating the text into an invented language called Basic English. It was a recording that was aired on the BBC. It was sold at music stores in London. It was used in cross promotion when they published the Anna Livia chapter by itself. And so apparently, and the thing, the little snippet that I love best says, due to the decline in Joyce's eyesight, photographic enlargements of a printed edition were kept on hand in the recording studios. The letters were not big enough, however, and Ogden reportedly stood by Joyce, whispering into his ear the author's own words.
Oh, so man.
He was so busted that he couldn't. So let me see if this works here.
Well, don't you ken it, or haven't I told you? Every telling has a tailing, and that's the he and the she of it. Look, the dusk is growing. My branches lofty are taking root, and my cold chair's gone ashly. Feeloo. What age is that? It soon is late. 'Tis endless now since I or one last saw Waterhouse's clock. They took it asunder, I heard them sigh. When will they reassemble it? Oh, my back. I'd want to go to Aixley Pains. Ping pang, there's the bell for sexolitis. At concepta this in the spray. Pang. Ring out the clothes, ring in the dew.
So, if we get a sense of what Joyce, I'm assuming that Joyce was reading that in exactly the way that he felt like he heard it in his head. So it's an interesting to hear it in his own voice in terms of the speed. Obviously, there's an Irish accent in there.
Yeah.
But in terms of, and there's a lot of personality in there. And that was one of the things that I really missed when I was reading it, is I was like, there are two voices in here, these washerwomen, with a little bit of preparation. You could ensure that you made it clear who was talking to who. Preparation is not something that we do very much of. So I say that. I've got all this.
I was like, piles you say
piles of rules. Yeah. I spend a little bit of time doing it, but I don't do as much as I should. But yeah, hearing it that way, you kind of, because I've brought up in the past the Toronto Theatre Company, who are doing the entirety of the Wake in performance here in Toronto, and the actor who does it is Irish, and he does it very, very, very quickly, so quickly that it becomes sort of, it's funny, it's very charming, but it's also so fast you can barely take it. Whereas Joyce isn't doing that. And I kind of, when I first heard that there was a recording of this, I thought Joyce would be just about unintelligible, but
speeding through it in such a way.
Yeah. And so it's interesting. It really makes me go, okay, I feel as though we're on the right track for the way that we're reading it, whether or not we're hitting everything correctly. But yeah, really interesting. I thought finding did you find your river? Was the Allegheny in there? Did you get there?
Did you say it? I don't know.
I might. But that was the interesting thing. I regretted not setting ourselves a challenge of circling every river we found as we went, because I felt as though sometimes you would see two words next to each other and you would say them and you'd be like, oh, that's a river. I just said a river.
Yeah.
Or there'd be someone's name and that name was very clearly just the name of a river in Poland or something.
Well, yeah, and also you have to, like, the fact that he bastardizes words. I was like, okay, I know the Niger River, sure, but Yancy, I was like, is that the Yancey River? Like, what, you know?
Absolutely, it is. Yeah, I found the Humber, which is a river here in Ontario. Lots of different ones. I mean, obviously, big ones. The Thames is in there.
Yeah.
The Nile is in there. And then others which are very, very obscure. And in one of those articles that I was talking about earlier, they talked about how they had a really hard time tracking down one of the references, and it was an incredibly obscure river that had been since renamed. But then, in Czechoslovakia, a country that no longer exists. But it was, the Chattahoochee is in there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so
I wondered how many of those were hidden in names as well.
Yes, yeah. So it's interesting. So, which I guess also explains why, when Joyce claimed 500, the readers went to 1,117, because you can start sort of reading things into it. And Joyce was apparently, when someone went to Nora and said, "We found more rivers," she was not at all. She and Joyce, maybe it was Joyce. Anyway, they weren't surprised. They're like, yeah, that's not surprising. There's probably going to be more. That
he's like, just slipped in.
I'd be interested to see how many of those rivers were in the first draft, and whether that's something that he layered in as he went. He's trying to sort of put in as many quotations as he can, and he's got a big list next to his writing area, and he's crossing them off as he manages to shoehorn them in.
I mean, I've done that before. Where I'm like, I want to reference these things. Where does it fit?
Yeah. Well, when you're adapting Shakespeare and things like that, you're trying to get the references in. I found the challenge of reading 20 pages solo to be fairly daunting, but it was one of those things that it was hardest. I think just like running a marathon, when you realize in the first quarter that you made a terrible mistake. If you dwell too much on that, you quit.
Right.
And then I don't know if it came through in the recording, but my kids were making all sorts of racket. My daughter's got a friend over, and so they're making all sorts of noise upstairs. And then I had a cup of tea here I really wanted to sip from, but I was just like, I don't know. I got to find a spot to be able to do that. Thinking things like, I should have gone to the bathroom before we started this. But in the end, I hit a stride and felt pretty good about it by the end.
Yeah, I could I was looking at the page count. I was like, okay, he's halfway. He's good now. Like, you know. And then even when there was like 3 pages left, I was like, there's no way he's gonna stop now. So I was like,
yeah. After a little while, just getting sort of the sense. Once we got into the list of presents, I kind of felt like I was pretty much home free from then. Whether or not it's listenable because it's a long one, I don't know. It's the time will tell.
There's one line from this that I do love. Call her calamity electrifies men. I was like,
yes.
Yeah. I was like, I love
absolutely. That. Yeah. That's a poster outside a burlesque club.
Call her calamity.
On page 211, my name shows up. So
it does.
Yeah. And then
your last name shows up too near the end.
Yeah. So I've got both on. That's on page 215. Malone shows up. So I feel as though there's a reason why I was drawn to this chapter is because my name is in it. Ireland sober is Ireland stiff.
Yes. Yeah. well, and there was also there was an erection joke in here.
Somewhere. Oh yes. That was one of the gifts, right?
Yeah, steadfast dick or something like that.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah. And then we have Hosty Frosty, and Kate Tip, and Festy King all show up again.
They do
to get gifts.
It's like, oh, hi friends.
Yeah, so that's nice to a hole in the ballad for Hosty. So throwbacks to our friends from earlier in the book.
Night Marching Hare, I thought was Victor Huguenot. I was like, that's nice.
And I loved on page 198 to call someone an anti-abecedarian. I don't know if abecedarian is a word in
my lexicon, not at all.
Lexicon, but it's one that's worth having. Abecedarian, because it's spelled ABCED. Mm-hmm. It's someone who learns. So because the first 5 letters are the first 5 letters of the alphabet, an abecedarian is someone who is a student, a learner.
So like, listen here, you dummy.
Yeah. So someone who's an anti-abecedarian. which I thought I liked that one too.
Our Staley bread as opposed to daily bread, I thought was good.
Yeah.
That's a good old son of a ditch. I was all about.
And with those corruptions, I'm always so interested to see, and maybe it's worth looking at the first draft to see whether or not those corruptions are still there. Because I kind of feel as though there's a version of this book where he's written it kind of in straightforward language, and then he's made the corruptions. I think he was probably quick enough to make the corruptions on the spot as he went. But I wonder if you were to take all those corruptions out and translate it back into straightforward English or go-ahead plot, like he says, what does it look like? I mean, maybe it's also... It's not intended to be that way, but it's one of those interesting things. I'm interested to see whether those corruptions happen on the spot or whether they happened in a later draft where he goes back and takes what he's written and then corrupts it so that it's a little wittier.
Yeah, like Lord help you, Maria, full of grease, the load is with me.
Yeah.
I was like, that it reads of like stand-up comedian sort of like quick to jest, but I'm with you. And how much of this was, I know the plot, now I can to fuddle with it.
Yeah. On the bottom of 208, she said, no, she did mercy me, but mercy with an S-E-Y. Obviously, the Mersey River in Liverpool. Just things like that, where he's very clearly delighting in the ability to fold these things in. And when I said mercy me on the reading, the reader wouldn't hear that pun.
Goes back to what we said. You need to have your book with you. Although if you're driving, don't do that.
Yeah, don't do that. No, that's not a good idea. But oh, what fun. Well, this has turned into a long one, which is Joyce's fault, so I'm going to blame him. But I'm not sad that I got to spend an hour and a half with you. But I know you have a busy day, so I'm going to say that is all the time we have this week for Wake. We return next week to start into Book 2. But before we do that, before we start Book 2, we are going to maybe summarize Book 1. We're going to come back with a special episode next week to just talk about what we found in Book 1 and what was interesting. It may just be a reiteration of all the things we've already said, but that's fine. No one's listening, so it's fine. We have some listeners and we love you for listening. Constantly astonished every time I release an episode and then the listening stats go up, but very glad that you're here. And then after that, we were going to get into Book 2 where things start to really get wacky. Looking forward to that.
No, there's some weird stuff on the page that we're like, okay, how we...
Yeah, but if you are concerned about how we're going to manage it, rest assured we are bringing in the experts. Neil Wexler will be joining us for the hard stuff. So Neil, who you remember from the first season, who knows all the things about the book, he's going to be here to help us with night lessons, which is the tricky tutu, but that's a few weeks away. So we'll wait until we get there.
Yeah.
So I've been Toby Malone, joined as ever by TJ Young. Thank you so much, TJ, for being here. As
of
always.
Course.
Yeah. And we bid farewell to Book 1 and look ahead to new challenges. See you next week, submariners and boaters. This has been Wake, a cold reading of James Joyce's Finnegans Wake, just to hear it out loud. If you've made it this far, thank you for your dedication. Join us next week for another segment of Finnegans Wake and a chat about what we've found. Wake is a Moon Street Media podcast, engineered by TJ Young and Toby Malone. Our theme song is The Ballad of Perso Riley, arranged and performed by Meg Logue after James Joyce. Wake is recorded in Canada, where Finnegans Wake is in the public domain. For community and bonus content, join us at our free Patreon at patreon.com/wakepod. If you have questions about Finnegans Wake, don't ask us. We're just as confused as you are. See you next week.